It was a Thursday evening, one of those ordinary ones that slowly dissolve into the night without drama or noise. The kind where you don't expect your life to take a turn you'll never be able to explain. Not to yourself, not to anyone. I had just finished putting away the dishes. The house felt emptier than usual. My husband, Daniel, had flown to Chicago for a 3-day business trip. Normally, his absence didn't bother me. After all, we'd both grown accustomed to the ebb and flow of corporate life. But that night, something about the silence pressed against my chest like a weight I couldn't name. Our son, Jordan, was home from college for the long weekend. 19 now. He was taller than me, leaner than Daniel, and quieter than he used to be. Something in him had changed this past year. Maybe it was the pressures of campus life, or maybe something more. I'd noticed him staring off more often, answering in half sentences, retreating early to his room with headphones and hoodies pulled tight. I had chalked it up to growing up. Dinner's in the microwave. I called out toward the hallway, though I wasn't sure if he was even hungry. "Thanks," came a muffled voice, not from the kitchen, but from the stairs. I turned. There he was, barefoot, in sweats, his hair still wet from a recent shower, and his eyes locked on mine a moment longer than necessary. "You okay?" I asked. He paused. "Yeah, just tired. Long drive back." He nodded, but there was more in that silence than fatigue. I turned back to wiping the counter, feeling his gaze linger a few seconds longer before he padded into the kitchen. He didn't warm up the food, just grabbed a cold soda and leaned against the fridge, watching me. "You don't have work emails to answer tonight?" he asked. "Already done." I smiled over my shoulder. "Why? You planning something exciting?" He chuckled softly. "Not really." I couldn't put my finger on it, but his voice carried a hesitation I hadn't heard before, as if he was testing the waters of something unsaid. Then he asked, "Do you ever get lonely when Dad's gone?" The question hit like a flicker of lightning in the dark, direct, strange, and oddly mature. I looked up. "Sometimes. But after 15 years, you learn to live with the rhythm." Jordan nodded, his eyes unreadable. "Yeah, I guess being used to something doesn't always mean it's easy." I dried my hands and turned to him fully now. "Something on your mind?" He hesitated. "Not really. He stopped, glanced away. "Forget it. It's dumb." "Jordan." I softened my tone. "You know you can talk to me, right? No matter what." He exhaled, slowly, like he was holding something in that he wasn't sure he should let out. There was a pause. Then he smiled faintly. Maybe later. He left the kitchen and disappeared into the hallway. I stood there for a moment longer, confused by the odd conversation and the way his eyes had studied mine, not with judgment, not even discomfort, but something else, something curious, something hesitant. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in our bed alone, scrolling through old vacation photos, the room lit only by the screen's glow. Memories of beach days, theme parks, and Sunday mornings flooded in. In so many of them, Jordan had his arm around Daniel or sitting close beside me, smiling. But now, he felt like a stranger with familiar eyes. Around midnight, I heard movement in the hallway, footsteps soft. I assumed it was Jordan heading to the bathroom, but the steps didn't fade away. They paused outside my bedroom door. I turned my phone off and sat up. A gentle knock. "Yeah." I called. Jordan's voice. "You awake?" "Yeah, come in." The door creaked open. He stood there in that same hoodie, one hand rubbing the back of his neck. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "Can I just talk for a bit?" "Of course." I shifted, patting the bed beside me. He came in slowly, like walking through water, sat down carefully, like he wasn't sure if this was the right decision. "Everything okay?" I asked, studying his face in the dim light. He looked forward, not at me. "I've just had a lot on my mind lately." "College stuff?" He shook his head. "No, more like personal stuff." He finally turned toward me, and in that moment, his expression wasn't the guarded one I'd seen over dinner. It was vulnerable, raw, like he was pulling off a mask he'd been wearing far too long. "I don't really talk to Dad about things like this," he said slowly. He's kind of not the best at listening without fixing. And me? I asked gently. He gave a tiny laugh. You listen. You always have. A pause. He shifted slightly closer. I could feel the tension in the space between us. Do you remember when I was little, I used to sneak into your room during thunderstorms? He asked. I nodded. You hated the lightning. I didn't hate the lightning, he said. I just liked the way it felt safer here, with you. The words hung heavy in the air. Jordan, I began, but I didn't know where I was going with it. He looked at me now, full on. Can I ask you something? And can you promise you won't freak out? My throat tightened. Okay. Have you ever wanted something you knew you shouldn't want? He asked. My heart skipped. Something that didn't make sense but still felt right somehow. I swallowed, barely breathing. Yes, I said, barely above a whisper. His eyes searched mine for a long time. Then he said, Me too. The silence was deafening now. He didn't move, didn't touch me, but the gravity in the room shifted. Something unspoken had cracked open between us. And it wasn't just curiosity. It was something darker, something more dangerous. Before I could speak, he stood up. I should go back to bed, he said, voice thick. I didn't stop him. He turned to the door, paused with his hand on the knob, and then, without looking back, he said, I'm not a kid anymore, Dad. He closed the door behind him. I barely slept that night. Jordan's words echoed like thunder in a cave. I'm not a kid anymore, Dad. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. The calm, slow conviction behind it. The look in his eyes that refused to flinch. The kind of look a man gives when he stepped past a line he's known for years, but never dared cross. I lay there, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear from his room. I wasn't afraid, but I wasn't at peace either. Something between us had shifted, and neither of us could pretend it hadn't. By morning, the house was filled with forced normalcy. I was in the kitchen, making coffee when he walked in, wearing the same gray hoodie from last night, hood down now, revealing slightly messy hair that made him look younger, though his expression didn't. Morning, I said, my voice lighter than I felt. Morning. He grabbed a glass of water and leaned against the counter across from me. I tried to read his face. He looked calm, almost too calm, like someone who had said what he needed to say and was now waiting patiently for a response. We didn't speak about last night. Not directly. Instead, he said, I think I'm going to gym later. You want anything while I'm out? I blinked. No, I'm good. He nodded. Cool. Just like that, the moment was swallowed by routine. But it wasn't gone. It was in the way his eyes lingered on mine, in the way his fingers grazed mine when he passed me the sugar bowl, in the subtle closeness that felt too deliberate to be accidental. Later that day, I found myself avoiding the living room, his usual hangout spot, because I wasn't sure how to sit near him without replaying last night. I knew I wasn't imagining things. The way he looked at me, the way he spoke, it wasn't adolescent rebellion. It wasn't innocent affection. It was layered, dangerous, real. When the house finally settled into its late afternoon lull, I stood outside on the porch for air. I needed clarity. I needed space to think. And yet, I didn't notice him step up behind me until I felt his presence, not even a sound to announce him. You used to come out here when you were upset, he said softly. I turned slightly. Still do. He leaned on the railing next to me, arms folded. You okay? I took a long breath. I don't know. He didn't respond at first. Just watched the horizon with me, the sun melting into orange and gold layers in the sky. I meant what I said last night. He finally said. I glanced at him. Which part? All of it. A lump formed in my throat. You're my son, Jordan. He didn't flinch. I know, but that doesn't change what I feel. I looked away. You think this is something you feel now, but it's not new, he interrupted. I felt it for a long time. I just didn't have the guts to say it until now. There was a pause, so heavy it felt like the wind stopped moving. He turned toward me, fully now. You think I don't see the way you look at me sometimes? Like you're trying not to see something? Jordan, This isn't right. He nodded slowly. I know how it sounds. Believe me, I've told myself every version of why it's wrong, but it doesn't make it go away. I backed up a step, feeling the weight of his confession bear down on me. We can't have this conversation. We already are. I shook my head, retreating. No, this stops here. His jaw tensed. Does it? Or are you just scared because it makes too much sense? That was the line. The moment I felt something snap inside me, I turned back toward the door. You need to give me space. He didn't follow. Instead, he said quietly, So do you? That night, I sat in the bedroom, door locked. I couldn't eat, couldn't think. I stared at a photo of the three of us, me, Daniel, and Jordan, taken years ago on a beach in Oregon. Jordan couldn't have been more than 12. Daniel had his arms around us both, smiling like life was whole. Now, Daniel was across the country, and Jordan was down the hall, and I was sitting here, suffocating under the weight of something I never thought I'd feel. Yes, I'd always loved my son. But now, that love sat dangerously close to something I couldn't name, without shattering the world I knew. I heard a soft knock again. I froze. Then his voice, quieter than before, I'm sorry. I didn't move. I didn't mean to scare you. I just couldn't carry it anymore. Silence. Good night, Dad. His footsteps faded. My chest ached, because part of me wanted to open that door. And part of me knew, if I did, nothing would be the same again. The next morning, I avoided the kitchen altogether. I didn't want to face him. Not yet. Instead, I sipped my coffee by the window in the upstairs hallway, where I could see the driveway, the yard, the world beyond this house. The normal world. One that didn't feel like it was teetering on the edge of something unnameable. I heard Jordan downstairs. His footsteps were unmistakable. Calm, heavy, a quiet confidence that both unsettled and intrigued me. He was moving like someone who wasn't waiting for permission anymore. I kept hearing his voice from last night, gentle yet unwavering. I didn't mean to scare you. I just couldn't carry it anymore. What disturbed me most wasn't what he said. It was how I felt hearing it, because some dark part of me didn't hate it. And that made me question everything. A few hours later, I was in the backyard, watering the garden just to distract myself. I didn't expect him to come out, but of course he did. Want help? He asked. I didn't answer, just handed him the second hose. We stood side by side, watering different patches of earth, silent except for the gentle spray of water and birds overhead. Did you mean it? He asked suddenly. I looked at him. Mean what? When you said this had to stop. I swallowed hard. I did. He nodded slowly. Okay. I waited. Okay? Yeah, he said. Because I realized something last night. I raised an eyebrow. What? That I don't need you to say it out loud. I can see it in your eyes every time you look at me. I set the hose down. Jordan. He cut me off. Don't deny it just to protect me. I'm not a kid anymore. I know what I feel and I know what I see. His eyes didn't flinch. Just tell me the truth, he said softly. Do you feel anything you're not supposed to? The question split the air like a blade. I should have said no. I should have lied. But I didn't. I don't know what I feel anymore. I whispered. His expression didn't change. That's not a no. I turned away, furious with myself. This can't happen, Jordan. Then don't let it, he said. But don't act like you don't understand, because I think you do. He walked away after that, and I didn't stop him, because he was right. That evening, Daniel called. He sounded tired. Hotel noise, buzz in the background. Everything okay there? He asked. I paused too long. Yeah, just tired. Jordan behaving? I hesitated again. Yeah, he's been quiet. Grown up. Daniel chuckled. That's a first. I forced a laugh, but my hand was shaking. After the call ended, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the carpet. Jordan hadn't knocked that night, but I could feel him on the other side of the house, waiting, watching, and worse. I felt myself wanting to walk toward his door. I didn't, but I thought about it. What would you do if the line between love and boundaries blurred forever? Stay tuned for part 4, where temptation deepens and decisions become irreversible. If you're hooked, don't forget to like, share, and follow for the next emotional twist. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life. It was just past 10:30 p.m. The kind of night where the world goes quiet, but the mind doesn't. I was lying in bed again, lights off, staring at the ceiling like it had answers. The faint hum of the AC, the creak of wood, the faraway sound of a dog barking. Every small noise felt louder, because inside me, everything was louder. There was a knock at the door, not soft this time, not hesitant, firm, like a decision had already been made. I didn't answer, but I didn't move either. The door opened slowly. Jordan stood there, backlit by the hallway light. He wasn't wearing the hoodie tonight, just a t-shirt and pajama pants. He looked grown, not like a college kid, not like someone testing limits, like someone who already knew what he wanted. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. I should have said no. I didn't. He stepped in and closed the door behind him. "Jordan, this isn't. I'm not here to do anything," he cut in gently. "I just want to talk. That's all. I promise." He stood near the door, not moving closer. Respectful, controlled, but I could still feel his presence like heat in the air. "What do you want to talk about?" I asked, my voice low. "You." I frowned. "Me?" "You've always been the strong one, the safe one, the one who knew what a line was." He took a breath. "But now, I think you're starting to feel what it's like to be confused." "Like me?" I sat up slowly. "I'm not confused. I'm scared." He nodded. "Of me?" "No, of myself." He looked at the floor for a long moment. Then he whispered, "I've never told anyone how I feel, not even my friends. But every time I'm around you, it feels like I don't have a lie." I closed my eyes. "I wish you didn't feel that way." "But I do," he said. "And I think deep down, so do you." He took one step forward, then stopped. "I won't come closer. I won't do anything you don't want. But if you tell me right now to forget everything, I will." I stared at him. He waited. The silence was like glass, fragile, clear, and sharp at the edges. "Jordan," I said softly, "you're my son." "I know," he said. "That hasn't stopped anything I felt for the last 2 years." My heart pounded in my ears. I stood up, walked toward the window. I didn't know what to say, how to breathe. Behind me, I felt his presence closer. Not touching, just near. "Do you want me to leave?" he asked again, softer this time. I turned around. Our eyes met, and for a moment, just a moment, I didn't see my son. I saw someone who loved me, deeply, quietly, painfully. I whispered, "I don't know what I want." And that was the worst truth of all. He didn't touch me, didn't even sit. He turned slowly and walked back to the door. Before leaving, he paused. Then he said, "If you ever figure out, I'll be here." And then he was gone, leaving behind a kind of silence that doesn't go away in the morning. The house felt different the next morning. Not louder, not quieter, just altered, like something had shifted beneath the walls, behind the windows. I could feel it in the way the sunlight came through the blinds, soft but too direct, like it knew. Jordan was in the kitchen when I went downstairs. The coffee pot was untouched, the cereal box unopened. I walked to the living room and glanced down the hall. His door was closed, but I could hear faint music behind it. One of those lo-fi ambient playlists he always listened to while thinking or pretending not to. I didn't knock. I didn't speak. I just stood there in the hallway, wondering how things had spiraled this far, how a quiet house and a few carefully buried feelings could unravel years of discipline and clarity in just a handful of conversations. It wasn't that I didn't love my son. I loved him too much. And that was exactly the problem. There were moments, especially over the last few days, when I caught myself waiting for his footsteps, watching for his shadow, listening for his voice. And those things used to be fatherly instinct, parental attentiveness. Now it was something else, something I couldn't define without shame. Around noon, I walked past the bathroom mirror. And for the first time in a long time, I really looked at myself. Not the quick glance for shaving or brushing teeth. A real look. Who was this man? This father who couldn't control his own heart, let alone someone else's? My reflection didn't look guilty. It looked tired. And worse, lonely. Not because Daniel was gone, but because something inside me had cracked, and I no longer knew how to hide the pieces. Jordan finally emerged around 2 p.m. His eyes were calm. Not cold, just distant. We passed each other at the hallway corner. He stopped. Hey! Hey! Sorry I didn't say goodnight last night, he said. I shook my head. You did. You said enough. He studied me, cautious. Are you mad at me? No. You sure? I paused. I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at myself. Why? Because I don't know what the hell I'm doing anymore. His expression didn't change. He just nodded, as if he already knew. That evening, something happened that neither of us planned. I was in the laundry room, folding towels. Jordan walked in, carrying a basket of his own clothes. He sat down beside mine, wordless. We folded together. Standing shoulder to shoulder, the rhythm of fabric the only sound. His hand brushed mine. We both froze. Not dramatically. Not even for long. But it was enough. Enough to feel something surge through the silence. He didn't apologize. Didn't explain. He just continued folding. And so did I. But our fingers didn't touch again. That night, I stood in the doorway of his room. He was on his bed, headphones on, watching something on his laptop. He looked up when he saw me. I didn't enter. He pulled the headphones off slowly. Yeah, I wanted to say goodnight, I said. He tilted his head. You haven't done that since I was like 12. I know. I stayed at the threshold, arms crossed, unsure of my own motives. Maybe I just wanted to see his face one last time before sleep. Or maybe I wanted to know if he was still holding on. He closed the laptop, sat up slightly. Is this you checking if I'm okay or if you're okay? Maybe both. He smiled barely. I'm okay. I nodded. Good. A long pause. Then he asked, and you? I didn't answer. I just said, good night, and walked away. But in that quiet hallway, between the rooms we had sealed ourselves into, I knew this wasn't over. Whatever this was, it had taken root. And roots don't vanish just because you stop watering them. The next day was cloudy, not rainy, just gray. One of those skies that hover like a question you can't quite answer. Daniel texted in the morning. Flight's on time. I should be home late tomorrow. I stared at the message for a long while. Tomorrow. One more night. One more night of silence that wasn't really silence. Of conversations between glances. Of tension that had started to feel familiar, predictable, even. I didn't reply right away. I didn't know what to say. Jordan and I barely spoke that day. He stayed in his room most of the morning. I stayed in mine. The air between us was thick, with everything we hadn't said, not just in the last few days, but maybe for years, maybe forever. Around 4 p.m., I was in the garage, looking for an old photo album Daniel had mentioned over the phone. He wanted to show it to a colleague in Chicago, a picture of his grandfather's farm, or something like that. I opened a plastic storage bin, and there it was. But underneath it was a photo I hadn't seen in years. A picture of me and Jordan from his middle school graduation. I had my arm around him. He was shorter back then, his face rounder, his smile wider. I remembered how he kept looking up at me that day, like he was proud just to be standing next to me. And now, he didn't look up anymore. He looked straight at me, like an equal, like a man. I brought the album inside and placed it on the kitchen table. I didn't expect him to be there, but he was, sitting quietly, eating cereal at almost 5 in the evening, his phone face down, his eyes on me. You find it? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, it was under a stack of old stuff. He gestured toward the table. Can I see? I hesitated. Then I handed him the album. He opened it slowly, flipping through pages with more care than I'd expected. He paused on a photo from when we visited Seattle. He must have been around 10. He was sitting on my shoulders, wearing oversized sunglasses and eating cotton candy. "You used to carry me everywhere," he said, smiling faintly. "You used to fall asleep in the car every 15 minutes. He laughed under his breath. "I hated long rides, but not when you were driving." There was something in his voice, nostalgic, but heavier than it should have been, like he wasn't just remembering childhood, like he was mourning it. "I miss that sometimes," he said. "What? Being a kid?" "No, being close to you without it feeling complicated." I sat across from him, folding my hands. "It's not supposed to feel like this." "But it does," he said simply, "and pretending it doesn't only makes it worse." He looked up, eyes calm but open. "I think you feel it too. You just don't know where to put it." I stared at the table. "There's nowhere to put it." He closed the album gently and slid it back toward me. Then, without warning, he said, "Do you want me to leave? I can go back to campus tonight." The words landed like ice water. "No," I said quicker than I meant to. He blinked. "Then what do you want?" "I want things to go back to the way they were." He leaned back, arms folded. "They won't. You know that." "I'm trying," I said quietly. "I'm really trying." "I'm not asking you to do anything," he replied. "I just don't want to lie anymore." That night, I didn't sleep again. And just after midnight, I heard the hallway creak. But no knock came, just footsteps. Slow, paused, right outside my door. I lay there, every muscle tight. Then the doorknob turned slightly, but it didn't open. A second later, the sound faded. He had walked away, and part of me wished he hadn't. I couldn't focus on anything the next day. Not the laundry, not the emails Daniel had forwarded from his hotel room, not the grocery list I kept pretending to update. Everything felt like noise trying to distract me from a storm I already knew was coming, because today was the day he'd return. Daniel, my husband, the man I'd built my life with, the one who trusted me, even when I didn't trust myself. And I was watching the clock like it might confess something I couldn't. Jordan was in the backyard when I stepped outside just after noon. The sun had burned through the clouds from the day before. He sat in the shade under the old maple tree, legs stretched out, hands behind his head, headphones on but one ear exposed. Not asleep, not lost, just waiting. I stood on the deck and stared at him for a long moment. He didn't look up. He didn't need to. He knew I was watching. The wind moved gently through the branches above him, casting light and shadow over his face in waves. I remember when he used to climb that same tree, legs swinging off a thick branch like he was the king of his tiny kingdom. Now he looked too big for that tree. Now he looked like a man who had outgrown the space I once held for him. "You going somewhere?" I asked, breaking the silence as I stepped down into the yard. He pulled off his headphones slowly. "No, I thought maybe you'd be out. Campus or the gym." He shook his head. "Didn't feel like leaving." A pause. "You know your dad comes back tonight." "I know." His tone didn't shift. No sarcasm. No reaction. Just awareness. "What happens now?" I asked him, quietly, carefully. He turned his head and finally met my gaze. "What do you mean?" "After everything. After these past few days." Jordan sat up, brushing grass from his palms. "I don't know." His voice was steady. "I don't have some master plan, if that's what you're worried about. I wasn't trying to trap you in anything. I just stopped pretending. That's all." I took a few steps closer. "And you think it's that simple?" "I don't think it's simple, but I think it's real." That was the problem. It was real. And no one had taught me how to kill something that real without killing a part of yourself, too. Later, we had dinner in silence. Just the two of us at the table. Again, the last supper before things returned to normal, if such a word still had meaning. I watched him eat, calm, slow, measured. He didn't make small talk, didn't try to push conversation. It felt like a truce, a quiet surrender between two people who'd finally run out of reasons to pretend. As I cleared the plates, he stood to help. We moved side by side, wordless, our hands brushing again over a wet dish. I felt the tension rise again, automatic now, like breathing. He didn't pull away this time, and I didn't either. Afterward, we sat in the living room, now on the same couch, but not far. He had his legs curled under him, scrolling idly through his phone. I was reading the same paragraph of a book over and over, without absorbing a single word. The sun dipped low, filling the room with gold, then orange, then the long blue of early dusk. "I don't think I've ever felt this close to someone before," he said suddenly. I didn't look up. Don't what?" "Don't say things like that. Not today." His voice was gentle. "Why not today?" "Because he's coming back. And everything has to go back." Jordan didn't respond. He just set his phone down, leaned forward, and looked at me for what felt like the first time again. "You're not going back," he said. "You can't go back from something you didn't choose," I replied. "But didn't you?" he asked. I stood up then. "Don't twist this." "I'm not twisting anything." His voice wasn't angry, not desperate, just honest. "You're terrified," he continued. "But it's not me you're scared of. It's the part of yourself that wants this. That's always wanted more than what you're allowed to want." I turned toward the hallway. "That's enough." "You're not angry at me," he said behind me. "You're angry because I saw you." Daniel's arrival was exactly on time. 7:48 p.m. The front door creaked open like it always did. His suitcase wheels bumped over the entry tiles. His voice called out with casual affection. "Home," and exhausted. I smiled, automatically. I met him at the door, took his bag, kissed his cheek. It was like flipping on an old switch. I played the role. Perfectly. Jordan appeared from the hallway a few seconds later. "Hey, Dad." Daniel smiled, clapped his shoulder. "There's my man. Missed you around here." Jordan nodded. "Missed you too." They hugged briefly. I watched it all like a scene from a film I used to love. Familiar, safe, easy, too easy. Because beneath the warmth in Jordan's voice, I could hear it. That quiet ache. The knowledge of everything between us. Of what we couldn't unsee now. That night, Daniel was tired. He went to bed early. I stayed downstairs. I knew he was asleep the moment I heard the bedroom door click shut. And minutes later, I heard another door open. Jordan stood at the edge of the staircase. We locked eyes. He didn't move. Neither did I. Something in my chest ached violently. Not with guilt, but with restraint. He stepped forward, just enough for the light to hit his face. "I wasn't going to say anything," he whispered. "But if I left without saying it, I'd regret it for the rest of my life." I didn't stop him. "I love you," he said. "Not like a son loves a father. Not like a boy confused. But like someone who finally found the one person who made them feel like breathing was easier." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. "I'll leave in the morning," he continued. "I just wanted you to know." He turned then, walked back toward the hallway. Not slowly, not dramatically, just deliberately. And this time, I didn't go after him. But I didn't sleep either. Not even for a second. Because love, when it comes in the wrong shape, still holds the power to break you clean in half. I woke up before the sun. Not because of a sound. Not because of a dream. Because I could feel the weight of something leaving the house. I lay there, eyes open in the gray-blue light of early morning, and I knew he was leaving today. Jordan. And it wasn't just about campus anymore. He was leaving because something had been spoken out loud. Something irreversible. "I love you," he had said. Not by accident. Not in confusion. But with terrifying clarity. And I hadn't said a word back. I crept out of bed carefully. Daniel still asleep, snoring softly, his arm draped across my pillow like a symbol of everything I once knew was solid. My husband, my life, the man I had never betrayed, not physically, but emotional betrayal? Emotional betrayal already lived in my bones. I went downstairs quietly. And sure enough, Jordan was in the kitchen, dressed, backpack slung over his shoulder, a half-empty coffee mug sitting near his hand. He didn't look surprised to see me. "Didn't think you'd be up," he said, softly. I couldn't sleep. He nodded, then looked down at his mug. "I was just going to leave a note." "You don't have to," I said. I know. He looked up then. There were no tears in his eyes, just peace. And that somehow made it worse. I'm not running, he said gently. I just know when to leave. I stepped forward, feeling like every inch between us was covered in glass. You said you loved me. I whispered. I did. You meant it. Every word. Even knowing? Especially knowing, he said. My voice cracked. You're my son, Jordan. He didn't blink. I know, but you're also a man. And so am I. We stood there, frozen in that impossible space between truth and morality, between want and right. I'm not asking you to do anything, he continued. I'm not trying to destroy your life, but I can't unfeel it. And I won't lie about it either. I clenched my fists. You think you're the only one who's felt torn apart by this? No, he said. I think we're both bleeding. But I also think you'll survive if you let yourself. And what does surviving look like to you? I asked. He smiled faintly. Maybe it means not punishing yourself for something you didn't choose to feel. The front door creaked as he opened it, the same way it had when Daniel returned. Only this time, it wasn't bringing something home. It was letting something go. He stepped outside, then turned back and said something I never expected. I don't regret telling you, and I don't hate you for not saying it back. Then he was gone. I stood in the foyer for a long time after that, just standing there, staring at the spot where he had just been. My throat burned. My chest felt tight. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. And then I heard Daniel's voice upstairs. You're up early. Coffee ready. My entire body stiffened. I didn't answer, because I couldn't tell him that while he slept, his son had told me something that would haunt me for the rest of my life. That entire day passed in fragments. Daniel moved around the house with his usual tired cheer, unpacking, checking emails, throwing his laundry into the wash. He asked about Jordan once. Did he already leave for campus? Yeah, I said, eyes on the floor. Didn't even say goodbye. I swallowed. He said he was in a rush. Daniel shrugged. Teenagers. But Jordan wasn't a teenager. And I wasn't just his father anymore. At least not in his eyes. That night, Daniel wanted to make love. It wasn't unusual. We hadn't been intimate in nearly 2 weeks, and he'd just returned from a long trip. I said yes, but everything in my body resisted. I felt like I was wearing someone else's skin. I closed my eyes while he kissed my neck. Tried to sink into the familiarity. Tried to remember how this used to feel. Safe, wanted, whole. But my mind betrayed me. I kept seeing Jordan's eyes, hearing his voice, feeling the way the room filled with something electric whenever he stood too close. I didn't mean to flinch, but I did. Daniel stopped. Hey, what's wrong? I'm just tired, I whispered. You sure? I nodded. He sighed, kissed my forehead, and rolled onto his side. I missed you. I miss you too, I said, and I meant it, but it didn't make the ache go away. In the days that followed, I tried to return to normal, tried to bury myself in work, in errands, in meals. Daniel and I talked about weekend plans, movie nights, trips to visit friends. He asked if Jordan seemed off to me lately. I said no, but the truth was, Jordan wasn't just off. He was gone, not from our lives, but from the version of life we once knew, and I had helped break it. One afternoon, a week after he left, I found something on the couch while vacuuming, a receipt from a bookstore. I unfolded it, dated 3 days before he left. Scrawled at the bottom was a note in handwriting I knew too well. Some truths don't want to be buried. They want to be seen, even if they ruin you. I sat down, still holding it, and cried for the first time in years. Not because I was ashamed, but because something about what he wrote, about the audacity of his honesty, cut me wide open. I didn't call him, not even once, because I didn't know if I had the right. What would I say? That I missed him? That the house felt emptier without his silence? That sometimes I walked past his room, half expecting him to be there, sitting on the edge of the bed, waiting for me to speak? That I still hadn't burned the shirt he left hanging behind the bathroom door? No, I said nothing. because silence was safer, and silence was all I had left. That night, after Daniel went to bed, I stood outside. The wind was cold against my arms. Above me, the stars were scattered across the black like little burns in the sky. I looked up and whispered something I didn't think anyone would hear. I'm sorry. I wasn't sure who it was meant for. Jordan, Daniel, myself, maybe all of us. Because sometimes love isn't just about what you choose. It's about what you survive after you felt it. 3 weeks passed. Each day folded into the next like an origami of silence. Beautiful at a glance, but fragile and filled with corners you didn't want to look too closely at. Jordan hadn't called. Not once. And neither had I. Daniel didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he did and just didn't ask. He assumed Jordan was busy, that he was adjusting to the new semester, reconnecting with friends. I envied that version of the truth. So clean, so simple. But every time I walked past the door to Jordan's room, something inside me flinched. The smell of his body wash was still faint in the air. His sketch pad still lay in the second drawer of the desk. I hadn't touched anything. Couldn't, because touching things meant facing it all again. Some nights, I lay in bed beside Daniel. Staring at the ceiling as he slept, my mind would wander backward, to that moment on the stairs. His voice, I love you, not like a son loves a father. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had said it back. Would he have stayed? Would I have fallen completely? And would I have even come back from it? One Thursday afternoon, I received an email from his university. Just a general newsletter, nothing personal. But it was enough to remind me that he was somewhere out there, moving forward, breathing, existing in a space that no longer included me in the same way. That night, I sat at my desk and opened a blank message. To Jordan, subject, just checking in. I typed 5 different sentences, deleted them all. Finally I wrote, let me know you're okay. That's all I ask. I hovered over the send button for a full minute, then closed the laptop. Didn't send it, because even a few words felt like an invitation. And I wasn't sure which door that message would open, his or mine. Daniel noticed I was off that weekend. We were in the kitchen, making breakfast. He reached across the table, touched my wrist, and said, are we okay? I blinked at him. Why wouldn't we be? You just seem somewhere else lately. I forced a smile. Work's been intense. He nodded, but didn't look convinced. I know we're not the most romantic couple on earth, he said, but I'd like to believe if something was bothering you, you'd tell me. Guilt filled my lungs like water. I nodded. Of course I would. Another lie, stacked on top of a mountain of silence. The next day, a package arrived. From Jordan's name. My hands trembled slightly as I opened the box in the hallway, away from Daniel's sight. Inside was a book, The Art of Loving by Eric Fromm, and tucked inside the front cover was a sticky note. Just 4 words. I still do. J. I sat down on the staircase and held the book in both hands like it might crumble if I blinked. There was no return address, no message beyond that, but it was enough to shatter whatever temporary peace I had constructed, because it meant he hadn't moved on, and neither had I. That night, I took the book to the guest room and closed the door. I read it in one sitting, every page, every underlined sentence, every margin where Jordan had written tiny thoughts about fear, about attachment, about pain. And in the middle of chapter 6, I saw it, written in his handwriting. I know this isn't supposed to happen, but I don't want a life full of things that were never supposed to happen. I want a life that felt true. I closed the book. I sat in the dark for an hour, maybe more, because that line wasn't just his confession. It was mine, too. Daniel had a business trip coming up again, 3 days in San Diego. He mentioned it casually at dinner. I'll only be gone a few nights. You'll barely notice I'm gone. I smiled politely, but in my head, I was already counting the hours. Not because I was planning anything, not this time, but because the house would be quiet again, and that silence would be honest. The night Daniel left, I didn't sleep. I walked the house barefoot, room to room, I opened Jordan's door for the first time in weeks. It still smelled like him. And God help me, I stood in that room and breathed it in like a man remembering a first love who'd never come back. I found myself sitting on his bed. My hand brushed the desk drawer. Inside was a letter, unsealed, with my name on it. I opened it with shaking fingers. Dad, you don't have to read this. You don't have to respond. But I had to write it. I left not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't be near you and pretend anymore. I think you feel the same. Even if you'll never say it. Even if you stay buried in the version of yourself that the world accepts. I will always be grateful for the home you gave me. But I can't unsee who you are now. And I hope one day you'll look in the mirror and stop punishing that version of you. Because I never did. And I never will. Jordan. I sat on his bed for what felt like hours. The letter in my lap. My hands over my mouth. And for the first time since he left, I whispered the truth into the dark. I loved you too. It wasn't loud. It wasn't brave. But it was real. And in that moment, I realized some confessions aren't meant for the person they're about. They're meant for the version of ourselves we've been too afraid to face. The day after I read Jordan's letter, the world looked different. Not because anything had changed outside, but because something inside me had. I'd said it out loud. Finally, even if no one heard it, but the walls. I loved you too. 3 words I never imagined I would direct toward my son. Not in that way. Not with that kind of weight. And now, every hour that passed after that felt like a countdown. A slow motion unraveling of everything I had stitched together to stay functional. Daniel returned on a Wednesday. He brought me my favorite chocolate from the airport. He smiled like everything was ordinary. I hugged him tightly. Tighter than usual. Not because I missed him, but because I was scared of what I'd become without him. He grounded me, even when I was lost. But now, that grounding felt like a cage. A beautiful one. Familiar. Loving. But a cage nonetheless. That weekend, I went into town. Alone. I didn't plan to stop by the bookstore. But I did. I walked through the aisles like I was looking for something I didn't remember the name of. The quiet hum of the old building soothed me, until a soft voice broke the stillness. You looking for something specific? I turned, and my heart stopped. Jordan. He looked thinner, older, like he hadn't slept properly in weeks. His eyes locked with mine, tired, confused, cautious. Jordan, I work here now. Part-time, he said. They needed help with restocking. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. He broke the silence for me. You weren't supposed to see me here, were you? No. I thought so. I didn't plan this, I said quickly. I didn't know. He nodded, cutting me off gently. It's okay. You don't have to explain. He glanced around. The store was nearly empty. Do you have 5 minutes? He asked. I hesitated, then nodded. He led me toward a narrow aisle near the back, between shelves of poetry and philosophy. We stood there, barely an arm's length apart. I got your book, I said softly, and your note. I wasn't sure you'd read it. I did. He waited, and I read the letter. I added. His eyes flickered. Then you know why I left. I nodded. Yes. Silence fell between us again, but it wasn't cold. It was thick with everything we hadn't dared to say. I don't want to ruin your life, he whispered. I never did. You didn't. He blinked. Then why does it feel like it? I looked at him, at the boy who had once followed me everywhere, who had asked for help with math, scraped knees, career advice, and now stood before me a man who had seen me in ways no one else had. I don't know how to carry this, I said. Jordan looked down. I don't either, he said, but pretending it didn't happen doesn't make it disappear. A breath, a crack. Then I said the words I'd never said in the right moment. I loved you too. He looked up sharply. I still do, I added. The look in his eyes was both relief and devastation. You don't have to say that. I do, because it's the truth. He closed his eyes for a second, then said, I wish things were different. Me too. But they're not, he added. And we both knew that was a final truth neither of us could escape. We didn't hug, didn't touch. We just stood there, holding the space like it was the only honest place left. Then he said, "I'm leaving town." My throat tightened. "What?" "Not forever. Just, I got an internship in Oregon. Starts next month." "That's far." "I know. Are you going because of me?" He paused, then said, "No, I'm going because of me." He looked at me again, but staying would hurt too much. And I couldn't argue with that. I just nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I'm proud of you," I said quietly. His lips curled into a sad smile. "I learned it from you." When I got home, Daniel was in the backyard watering the plants. He looked up and waved, his smile bright and true. And for a moment, I wished I were still the person he believed me to be. Oh, untangled, untouched by guilt. I walked up to him and wrapped my arms around him from behind. He chuckled. "What's this about?" "Nothing. Should I be suspicious?" I rested my chin on his shoulder. "No, you should be loved." "Then I'm lucky," he said. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't pull away from his affection, not because I was healed, but because I finally understood what it meant to carry love in more than one direction. That night, I stood outside in the backyard under stars. I imagined Jordan in some other town, packing boxes, smiling at strangers, trying to forget the way my eyes had searched his face in silence for answers. I closed my eyes and whispered again, "I'm sorry, not for the love, but for the pain that came with it." Some loves aren't meant to bloom, but they still grow roots. And the memory of them lives in the spaces between words, between breaths, between years that pass with quiet ache. 2 years later, the house is quieter than ever, not just because Jordan is gone, but because something inside me never fully came back after he left. Daniel doesn't notice. Not really. He's as present and patient as always. Our life is steady. Dinners, work schedules, weekend gardening, polite conversations with neighbors. On paper, everything looks perfect, but perfection often hides the most painful truths. And some truths never fully go away. They just get folded neatly into drawers you promise yourself never to open again. Jordan moved to Oregon as planned. He didn't come home for the holidays that first year. He said the internship was demanding, said the weather made travel difficult. But I knew better. He was protecting us, from each other, from what we couldn't fix. And honestly, from what we might still feel if we were ever in the same room again. He did call on my birthday. We didn't talk long. He asked about Daniel, about the garden, about our old dog, Toby. And just before hanging up, he said, "I still think about it." I didn't ask what it meant. We both knew. "Me too," I said. Then he whispered, "I don't regret you." And the call ended. I stared at the phone for a long time after, not crying, not shaking, just remembering how it felt to be seen that completely. Life moved forward, as it does. But that summer, I found myself walking into Jordan's old room more often, dusting it, straightening the bookshelf, fixing things that didn't need fixing. I'd run my hand over the desk where he left his letter, and every so often I'd pull open the drawer, just to make sure it was still there. One morning, Daniel found me sitting in that room. I hadn't noticed him at the door. He stood there quietly, watching me. "You miss him?" he asked. I nodded. "Me too," he said. I looked up, searching his face for any hint that he knew, that he'd always known. But there was nothing, only love, simple, undemanding, the kind I had never truly deserved. Eventually, Jordan did visit again. It was short, a weekend. He stayed at a hotel. Dinner was quiet, careful. Daniel was thrilled, of course. I tried not to look at him too long. And when I hugged him goodbye on Sunday afternoon, it felt like saying farewell to a different lifetime. People like to believe love is either pure or broken, but sometimes it's both. Sometimes it saves you and destroys you in the same breath. And sometimes the people you're meant to protect are the ones you hurt just by being honest. I still love Daniel, in a way that's lasted, in a way that's deep and earned. But a part of me, however small, however buried, will always live in that quiet, impossible love I never asked for and never truly let go of. Jordan gave me a mirror I hadn't dared to look into. And once I did, I couldn't unsee myself. Flawed, human, and capable of the love I never thought I'd be strong enough or weak enough to feel. If you've ever loved someone you weren't supposed to, if you've ever lived with a memory of a feeling you couldn't explain, then you understand. We don't always get to choose who we love, but we do get to choose what we do with that love. Sometimes, the bravest thing is walking away. Other times, it's carrying it quietly for the rest of your life. If this story moved you, made you think, or reflect on your own life, let us know in the comments. For more true, raw, and unforgettable stories like this one, subscribe and follow the channel. You never know. The next story might be yours.